Welcome to Middle School, the programme where we educate, we compete, we eat and repeat. And today we've got a very, very exciting guest. My guest today is Julia, who back in 2019 won Nursery Management News Today's Personality of the Year, so the most important person in the early years industry. But before we get back to your award, Julia, we're going to go way back, because in this show we like to look at, how did people's education start? And am I correct in thinking your first school wasn't actually in England?
No, Alex, it was actually in Libya, in Benghazi, and that's where I spent my school years until I was 8.
And what did you do in Benghazi? Was there anything particularly different to the UK, like during school or after school?
Definitely. We started school early in the morning and we finished by lunchtime, and then every afternoon we went down to the beach and swam every single day after school. Fantastic.
Beautiful. Then I understand, because of your dad's career, you went to various different schools, but then in sixth form you went to quite a cool place, didn't you?
Yes, the local boys' school decided to make itself into sixth form college, and so I was the first cohort of girls to join in the lower sixth. So there were boys underneath us, and we started off the sixth form college at Peter Symonds in Winchester. Oh,
brilliant. Now, at college, I think you got a taste for maybe travelling. I think you went on a gap year, didn't you?
Well, I travelled all my life because of my father's career. So we lived abroad a lot and travelled a lot. So in my gap year, I decided to backpack in Wales.
Wow. Now, did backpack in Wales lead you to university, or did it lead you to a certainly different route that'd be more backpacking?
Yes, I was going to go to university, but really needed a break from academia. And then I saw an advertisement for joining the army, and I thought, gosh, and it was incredibly well paid. It looked to be really fun and something different, which is what I've always loved, a little bit quirky. And I applied, and then I was accepted eventually after all the various interviews and practical tests one has to perform.
Now, I understand back in that period, females didn't go to Sandhurst even though you visited. Where did you exactly train, and what did training look like?
We were at Camberley, which was just down the road from Sandhurst. As you say, we had a lot of lectures at Sandhurst, but we had our own little Women's Royal Army Corps at the time, which has subsequently been disbanded. We trained, we did tactics and weapons training and running on all the various heaths, and a lot of leadership skills, and had a lot of fun actually. It was really exciting stuff, and some incredible exercises as well.
And then your leadership skills, I think, were used later on in the armed forces. There was a national crisis, I think, due to a national strike, and the beloved Green Goddesses came out. What did you have to do?
I had to make sure my drivers were able to drive the fire engines, and we also provided our own vehicles as well, and it was just a question of getting them there and helping out the whole of the country.
Then, I think what a lot of people forget is the armed forces were hugely involved in that period with the Iron Curtain. What was your involvement with the Cold War, Julia?
One of my postings when I was abroad in Germany was a thing called Bricksmiths, and we were training our drivers to go into behind the Iron Curtain and learning about tactics, and it was quite a tense time, but it was fun. I also was in charge of looking at missile sites for the nuclear, biological and chemical element of the army, and went all over Germany checking missiles bases from mostly the Americans, but all NATO.
So, at this point you've been in the armed forces nearly 8 years. What triggered you to leaving the army? Because your next adventures were quite different from armed forces, some would say.
Well, back in the day, we were not able to have children if you were in the army as a female.
Wow, can you just repeat that again? Sorry.
Unreal, really. You signed a contract to say that if you had a baby, then you would leave the army. It also came at a time when you had to decide, would you like to stay on in the army forever, or do you want to finish your short service career and leave? I had a husband who was in the city, and I felt, no, this is my natural time to go. And I went into sports car racing, the world sports car racing, which was really exciting.
So it sounds like you always had something creative if you went into marketing. What was the type of things you had to do for world sport car racing?
Oh, it was planning all the fixtures for the races. It was dealing with the teams, lots and lots of advertising and sponsorship, and garnering as much TV coverage as we could, and press and media, and fixing the price of the sports car money as well. And we were competing against Formula One, so it was pretty tough times.
So Kat, that's a great build up here in terms of your educate section. So you had school in Benghazi, you then had the armed forces, then you had sports car racing, but I think something led you towards early years. And you ended up in this profession you'd next spend the next quarter of a century. So how on earth did you get into children's nursery schools?
Well, I was lucky and blessed to have 2 children, and I was really loving being a mother with my first child. But I got very involved with her nursery, and they regularly asked me to go and help. I love workshops and being creative as well as outings and things, so I helped them a lot. And then they asked me to join the team, and I said, when my son is finished, I will. And I joined the team and got into early years in that way.
Wow, so now also in competition, one of the things that we've seen in a lot of people's lives, that almost severe illness can almost change their career direction again. What happened with yourself?
Yes, well, I managed to get qualified whilst I was working in that nursery, but when I had my breast cancer, it made me take stock of what I was doing and my future. And I thought I'd like to do this myself, have my own nursery, to have my own ethos, and work out how I want to educate those fabulous little people for the future.
So it now begins. How on earth did the name Seahorse come about? Because as we know in competition, brand is quite important. Your nursery is called Seahorse Nursery. Where's the seahorse come from?
Oh, way back to African days again. When I was in Libya, I was given a little dried seahorse, which of course would never happen today. But I cherished it and I loved it, and I had a love and a passion for seahorses all my life. And when I was thinking of the name, obviously I thought, oh, seahorse, yes. But when I looked, when I thought about what a seahorse stands for, with the father helping and looking after the little fry, and the fact that they're very gentle creatures, they do no harm, I thought this would be perfect for my name.
Wow. So you then established this amazing school, I believe is in Wandsworth. And then I understand that almost many years later, after teaching hundreds of children, suddenly you were in the finalists for Personality of the Year. Now there's lots of people who've dedicated their careers to children's nurseries and early years education. What on earth was the process to win Personality of the Year?
Well, it was quite tricky. How on earth one does try and win the sort of medal of our
Profession.
How on earth does one win the medal of our profession? I just really had to sort of think about what was so important to me about educating these young minds. I found I absolutely loved it, and I still love it 30 years later. And I think probably just being enthusiastic, being a creative soul, but really these young people are citizens of the future. And I've always felt strongly that their education should be very broad and encompass absolutely anything that we can think of to try and stimulate them and challenge them.
Now, lots of us don't leave our past behind just when we change jobs. What's this unique saying you have from your army days that you've made a special part of your curriculum at Seahorse Nursery?
We slightly adapted an army motto for Inky SWAT, and so with my daughter, but I have developed. Okay. Slightly adapted from the army saying of someone that was going to go on to higher education within the army to go to the very, very top of the echelon. So I've adapted it to be an Inky SWAT, and it's a curriculum that I devised for maths and for phonics, a newspaper with an interesting angle to help with critical thinking skills, and also to practice their handwriting and do creative booklets. And that's become very much something very important that is bespoke to the Seahorse Nursery. And I've developed it even more since my daughter joined the team, and I think that's one of the things that probably helped me win Personality of the Year.
That's a great saying. So Inky for their finger getting all the fountain penning, and SWAT for swatting hard for their exams. Now, one of the things we're trying doing on Medal School as well as your amazing career, is trying to bring a bit of a human element of how everyone's connected with eating. I think you told me previously that on your big days at the nursery when speaking to parents it's very little, but after you've had a great term or the children have had graduated to school, how do you celebrate? What type of food do you like to have to go all out to celebrate?
Oh, my absolute favourite is salmon and green beans and my Hasselback potatoes. That is my go-to meal whenever I want to celebrate.
Julia, it's been absolutely brilliant today. Now we look at the repeat section. So Julia's gone through his amazing education that started off in Libya and Benghazi, went through the armed forces, led on to sports car racing. You've then gone and won the biggest industry award in early years. I was just wondering, just to finish today though, and obviously we won't stop you getting from your salmon and your greens, but to finish today, anyone that's thinking of maybe setting up their own nursery school or career in early years, what bit of advice would you give them?
Think about the children always. Put them at the core of everything you do, and just try and give them the broadest education you can. You're laying the foundation, the whole foundation for the rest of their education. So you want to keep it fun, you want to keep it really interesting, you want to keep it different, and you want to bring in so many different elements so that they can decide and see what makes them curious for the rest of their lives.
Julia, it's been a pleasure to have you on Medal School. If people have enjoyed this today and you want to see more amazing people who've achieved the highest medals in their industry, sports, the arts, subscribe to Medal School, and we look forward to the next episode. Thank you so much, Julia, and it's amazing to hear about your career.
Thank you.